All right, everybody, welcome back to another Money Moves. We're excited to have you. I'm John Cleaver,
I'm Wendy Lee.
and welcome back. So we've got some good stuff to talk to you about tonight. Uh, Something happened here recently. I don't know, presidential debate. So
Yeah.
we're actually going to talk about, who won, what our political views are. No, we're not. We're not going to talk about any about that, but we are going to talk about, kind of really what's going on behind the scenes and the outcome as far as what it means to you, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But hang on to your seats, and I guess let's get ready to have the chat explode. But we're going to get started here and talk about the presidential debate and kind of what you need to know. Here we go. So the presidential debate. Let's talk about who won. No, I'm kidding. I don't want to talk about that, but I can tell you who's probably not going to win, and that's you and I, the everyday middle class working guy and gal. But let's talk about what you need to understand and what's really going on, and what they think and what we need to understand the reality of it is. So obviously we had the presidential debate this last week, right? I don't know if you watched it or not.
I watched all the replays.
The hit list, right? Kind of. So you probably do that with football games and stuff too, right? Just watch
those I watch all the way through.
Okay, so priorities. All right, got it. I had a chance to watch the majority of it, and it's almost like it's the same song and dance, the pony show, right? And what we've got in America, at least in my lifetime, the first president I voted for was George H. Bush. Or I guess H.W. Herbert Walker, the older guy, the dad, right? I kind of came up and grew up during that Reagan era. And then, you look at, actually, I remember the first inaugural speech was Ford. I remember I was like a little kid, but for whatever reason, I remember that. And then Jimmy Carter and then Reagan. But, now we're dealing with, obviously, President Biden and presumably Trump. Are going to be the two that are going to go at it. And we're going to find out, as we get closer to November. And I always am so excited about November because it's like, okay, finally all the political ads and the mudslinging's over. But, really, you look at, is the presidential race going to impact you? Well, on a macro level, I would say, yeah. Obviously, you look at what we've had over the last 4 years, and I don't know. I mean, when President Trump was in office, the economy was going very well. Prices were down, jobs were up for all, ethnic groups across the board, especially in the African American, depending on what you're looking at and things like that. And then we obviously had an election. I'm not going to say who did what or whatever, but there was an election, and the outcome was President Biden came in and things changed. And, I don't know if you've noticed it or not. I don't know if you use gasoline or grocery shop or anything like that. But have you noticed anything over the last 4 years?
Yeah, our country's gone to crap. That's what I've noticed.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's still America. It's still the greatest country on earth. I'm sorry. I'm a patriot. I mean, you can see behind me, I've got my eagle here. I got my flag here. So I'm actually out at my cabin right now watching the debate. No, I'm kidding. But it's one of those things that, you look at, how does that impact you? I mean, obviously the prices, inflation and everything else impacts all of us because we're the working class, right? And all of a sudden the stuff that we used to do and take for granted, it gets constrained, the extra stuff that we were able to buy for ourselves or our kids, whether it's, meal kits or supplements or, just going out to dinner and stuff like that. All of a sudden there's a choice of, do we do that or do we, keep the lights on? Right. I mean, and then you've got the economy as far as jobs and things like that. So there's a big impact. And obviously I'm not saying who did what, but there's been a big change over the last 4 years. But, you start looking at what the real issue is. I mean, what the real problem is, and everybody's got their pet issues. And it's almost like, to me, they use certain triggers on both sides to take the people's eyes off what's really going on in their lives. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking on my wazoo here. What do you?
No, I mean, a couple thoughts. One is I would say I never noticed a difference in presidents, Democrat or Republican, in the world in general. I felt like the difference between, Clinton versus Bush versus Obama, I personally didn't see a huge impact either way. The difference between, going from Trump to Biden has been drastic.
It's been dramatic. And, President Biden, and I'm not one of those people. He's not my president. He is my president. He's all of our presidents because he's the president of the United States, right? But, his approval ratings are down like through the floor, right? And historically through the floor. But, you look at what's going to happen at the next election, who knows? Yeah. I've got friends that are on the donkey side that say he's going to get reelected. I've got friends on the elephant side that say it's going to be Trump all the way. Who knows what's going to happen? You don't know until you know. Yeah. And, you look at it, though, but I want people to realize, so many people get fired up about the presidential election, right? But very few get fired up about their local elections. They're all the school board. The school board is probably the most critical election you can vote in.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
And
they're making it. I mean, I've seen since, post 2020, a lot more parents getting involved in school boards because of
what's happening.
Morally what's happening, right, in our world. And we have to fight for our kids because we now understand that the government is not for our kids and protecting our kids, right? No. And so, and just like, we talk about with the financial side, right? They're not for us becoming entrepreneurs and learning how to, lower our tax bill and all of that. They're for us becoming employees and slaves to a system, right?
Well, and that's why you look at systematizing schools, right? Common Core, don't even get me started on that, but, it started, I think, with Bush Jr., right? No Child Left Behind, that kind of thing. And that's really where you started to see a shift in the school approach to schooling and things like that. Because all of a sudden it's like, let's just make it one common, this is it, right? Everybody's got to get there. And I get it sounds good on paper, or looks good on paper. I guess paper doesn't sound. But it's one of those things that, what should we be teaching our kids? Number one, very few states out there, Florida's the latest one that just actually started doing this, teach any kind of personal finance. Yeah. Personal finance impacts my life way more than geometry does, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I play pool, on the pool table, and geometry, that's where it really fires up. But that doesn't really impact my life that much. Now, if I'm an architect or something like that, I could see that. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about, just general John Doe, Jane Doe out, in the public, right? Yeah. Having an understanding of how money works, having an understanding of how mortgages work, right? You're going to graduate, go get a job. You're going to start making money. Now what? Understanding the power of the rule of 72. Why it's so critical that you start saving money for later in life. It doesn't have to be just retirement. I like to talk about saving for wealth, but none of that's going on. Even the states that actually have something, it's brushed over and it's minimal. And it should be one of our baseline cores, right? Yeah. You could take that even a step further, talking about what you just talked about, entrepreneurship. Why is entrepreneurship, multiple streams of income, why is that so important? What do you think?
For me, because
just in general, for everybody. It's everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantee in a job, right? Like we've got to learn how to monetize our skills and make money outside of somebody else dictating it,
Multiple streams of income, right? So that way, if you do have your core job, that job, right? If you get laid off, you have a soft landing, not a train wreck, right? For you and your family. Understanding, going back to the personal finance, why it's so important to have an emergency fund, why it's so important to have a spending plan on how you're going to spend your money so you can be intentional about your money. This is stuff that they should be teaching in school, and they're not.
No.
Why do you think that is? It goes back to, I think, conspiracy theory. Let me put on my tinfoil hat, right? It goes back to what you were talking about. They're not trying to teach us how to be independent. They're trying to teach us how to go out and get a good job,
Yep.
get a real job, right? And don't try to understand taxes. Why? Because the IRS, IRS wants to make your money theirs.
Yep.
Okay, so people don't understand taxes. They just pay the taxes, and we tell ourselves, oh, two things are always guaranteed in life: death and taxes. Taxes didn't even come into play until 1913, folks. 1913. And you think about it, everybody knows about the Boston Tea Party, right?
Learn that in school. Yeah.
Boston Tea Party. That's when really the revolution started. And that was over a 2% tax on tea. 2% on tea on one item. And we broke loose of England, right? And now we're smiling and saying, okay, well, I'm okay with paying 22, 35% of my income to taxes. And ask yourself this question, folks. Do you think taxes are going to go up or go down by the time you retire? 33, 34, 35 trillion in debt and counting. You know, what do you think is going to happen? So that's why I think, and I'll get off my soapbox a little bit, but that's why I think it's so important that we understand, you know, you as a parent, you have a voice. You talked about it. More parents are getting involved. That school board election, that's your key right there. That's where you want to get plugged in. That's the most important election. Don't get me wrong. Presidential election, go out, vote. Definitely vote, right? Because that's going to impact us at a macro scale, both economically, socioeconomically, as well as you look at the political landscape across the globe on how we're perceived, strong or weak. So, you know, and that's all important because that creates a safe environment for, you know, the U.S. as far as being able to do global trade, things like that. But it's one of those things that, you know, do the politicians, and I'd love to hear from you, you know, the viewer out there. Do you think politicians today go to get elected for you, to serve you, or to serve themselves, to feed their own ego, and then obviously try to make money? Because it's amazing to me, and it's on both sides, folks. It's Republican, you know, the traditional Republicans as well as the Democrats. They go into office making like their net worth is like $500,000, maybe $1 million, and they come out and they're, I mean, look at Clinton, right? Their net worth is like through the roof. Obama, Bush, right? Both Bushes. You know, it's like I said, it's we've forgotten who they work for. They think we're here to serve them. They think that we're the sheep, and we need to wake up and realize that, hey, they work for us. You know, everybody, I don't know if you've heard of term limits and stuff like that. People talking about term limits. I mean, it's almost like you get into politics, and we've got politicians that are, you know, 80s. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to, you know, on the generational thing, I'm not trying to say they're not capable, but it's almost like once they're in, they're in. You know, you look at things like changing the voting areas, right? That's a concern. It should be a concern to you too. So, you know, educate yourself and realize, you know, if you want to break that cycle, you get involved in your local elections. Okay. And I'm not saying run for office. I'm just saying get out, learn, don't just vote straight ticket, get out and learn who they are, what they're all about if they're running for office. Right. And then, you know, get out there and, you know, vote and understand that they work for you. Don't be afraid to write your senator. Don't be afraid to write your representative and let them know your feelings on it. Right. So I'll get off the soapbox. What are your thoughts on all that, Wendy?
I mean, I think you know, I think this is what happened in the revolution. Like, I never understood the revolution necessarily. Like, I wasn't the history buff like you were. And I'm now, the older I get, the more I realize how important history is. Because
did you just call me a nerd?
Did I say that? But now I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see what happened, right? Like, they started to be controlled too much by the government. It wasn't serving. It wasn't for the people. And that's what I feel like, you know, we're starting to experience again.
Taxation without representation.
Yeah. It's not like when we look at people in office and go, I don't want any of them. And pretty much across the board, everyone says that, there's a problem.
Yeah. You know, when they're creating bills and laws where they're slipping all this secret stuff in, I mean, the stuff is like, you know, 300 pages. Nobody's reading that stuff. And I think it was Nancy Pelosi. And if I'm, you know, don't blow me up if I'm incorrect, but I think it was Nancy Pelosi that said, no, we pass them and then we read them after the fact. And I'm like, no, that's not serving America, right? So, again, the whole point of this, folks, is number one, educate yourself about money and finances, because that's what's so critical. That's why, we started this channel, right? Was to educate you about what you can be doing for you and your family. That's the front line of defense, right? Number two, make sure you're educating your children.
Yeah.
Don't let them go through the pain that you did. You know why you went through the pain? Because your parents didn't teach you, because we're not taught this stuff in school. And then number three, get involved in your local elections. Be a voice. Be a voice for your children. Be a voice for your future. And I'm not talking to, whatever. I'm talking specifically about educating and improving our society overall for everybody. Yeah. Everybody, right? Not just certain groups or things like that. Everybody. And we start doing that. We start working together. We're going to start talking to one another. We're going to realize we have way more in common than we don't, if that makes sense. We have more in common than most people realize, right? But what's happened is, again, going back to the distractions we were talking about, the parties are trying to politicalize and polarize everybody so strongly that a lot of people I talk to, they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing or voting while they're voting. They're just doing it because, well, I don't like that person. He's mean on the tweets, or, he's got Alzheimer's or whatever. Find out the facts. You see something on TikTok, don't just take it and start forwarding it to 1,000 people. Don't look at it on Instagram and just start forwarding. Take a second, do the research. Yeah. I had some stuff pop up last week, as a matter of fact. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Did I forward it out to 20 people? No. What I did was I went out and started doing my own little research. I'm my own little fact checker. And come to find out, it was BS. And that's the thing. Yeah. A lot of it's bleeding out to both sides. Yeah. And you and I are left confused in the middle, not knowing what to do. And that's what they want. Don't allow that. Mm-hmm. Don't allow that. So that's my political PSA for the day, folks. Very good. So again, not to rant, but America is the greatest country out there, hands down. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody else. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about opportunity for you and your family to earn an income, to go out and start a business. I still believe that anybody can be president. I honestly do that. Now they got to have a big pack behind them, right? But we can take our country back, right? So let's do it. Yeah. That's all, folks. I don't know. Wendy, do you have anything else to close?
Nope, you got it.
All right. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you next Tuesday. Love to hear your comments. Be nice. Be nice. Love to hear your comments, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.